You ever notice how the worst betrayals never happen with fireworks? They slip in quiet, like a draft under the door. You're sipping your coffee, mowing your lawn, fixing the leaky sink, and boom, your whole life's been rewritten behind your back. That's the funny thing about trust. You don't realize it's broken until the shards are already on the floor. My wife thought she was clever. She thought she was running circles around me. But what she didn't know, I was already lapping her. And when a man like me is one step ahead, revenge doesn't come loud. It comes clean. It started with a photo. A stupid photo on Facebook, the kind people double tap without thinking. She was supposed to be in Dallas at a sales conference. Instead, there she was, my wife, Alice, grinning like a high schooler beside Bryce, the office clown with too much gel in his hair. His arm draped around her, two cocktails in hand, captioned, "My real partner." Hashtag #WorkIsBanned for life. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity nearly cracked my ribs. 27 years of marriage. Countless nights I stayed up fixing her messes, paying her debts, covering her tracks, and she reduced it to a hashtag. Did I call her? No. Did I text? No. I walked into the kitchen, poured the rest of my coffee, and pulled a beige folder from the drawer. Inside, divorce petition, property division, disclosures. My lawyer called it clean and aggressive. I called it Plan B. I dropped it on the table like an ace in a poker game. Then I logged into Facebook and commented right under her little love note. "Congratulations. The divorce papers are on the kitchen table. Send. Log out." Done. 10 minutes later, I was back outside watering the lawn. The sprinkler hissed in rhythm, like nothing had changed. Except everything had. That night, as expected, she called. Her voice was sticky sweet, the kind she uses when she's guilty but thinks she can charm her way out. "Hey, babe," she chirped, dragging the word like syrup. "You're not actually mad, are you? It was just a joke. Everyone says stuff like, work husband. It's harmless." I didn't say a word. Just let her fill the silence. Amazing thing about liars. They'll keep talking until they strangle themselves. Finally, she asked, "You seriously didn't mean it, right? You didn't really file." I cut her off with 3 words. "Check the kitchen." The line went dead quiet. And right then, I knew the game had officially begun. By Monday morning, I was already logged into my burner Gmail, the one Alice didn't know about. The beige folder wasn't just theatrics. It was a warhead, primed and ready. First email went out at 9:14 a.m. sharp. Subject line, "Inappropriate conduct. You decide." Attached, screenshot of Alice and Bryce at the conference. Metadata included. Short and sweet. No commentary, no dramatics, just evidence. I sent it to her company's HR, the regional director, and, because fate has a sense of humor, the CEO's assistant, who just so happens to be the guy's wife. By lunch, Alice called again. Not sweet this time. Sharp. Panicked. "What the hell did you do?" she hissed. "Oh, just making sure everyone knows you and Bryce are office goals," I said evenly. "Thought your hashtag deserved more eyes on it." "You're insane," she snapped. "You've ruined my career." "Correction," I said. "You ruined your career. I just filed the paperwork." Silence. Then the mask cracked. "You think you're clever, don't you? You think you're going to walk away clean? Well, newsflash, I'll take half. The house, the accounts, everything. Don't underestimate me, Mark." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Alice, if you had half as much legal leverage as you do Audacity, I'd be worried. But you don't." See, what Alice didn't know was that while she was busy playing work wife, I had been busy quietly shifting the battlefield. Joint accounts? Already separated. Debts? Traced and documented. Hers in red ink, mine in black. The house. I'd refinanced in my name 3 months ago, after noticing her late-night calls to Bryce. She thought she was playing chess. She was actually a pawn in my game of checkers. That night, she stormed into the house, slammed the door. "You've humiliated me," she spat, throwing her purse on the counter. I looked up from my dinner, calm as a surgeon. "No, Alice. You humiliated yourself. I just provided the audience." She glared at me, trembling with fury. "I'll destroy you." I leaned back in my chair, folded my arms, and gave her the kind of smile that scared her more than yelling ever could. "No," I said softly. "You won't even see me coming." She scoffed and stormed upstairs, muttering under her breath. That was fine, because in war, noise is just distraction. And I wasn't distracted. I was already planning the next move. Alice tried to fight dirty. Problem was, I was already muddy. 2 days after the HR email, I got a call from my lawyer. He was chuckling. She's claiming emotional distress, he said. Wants to paint you as controlling, cold, maybe even abusive. I laughed so hard I had to set down my coffee. Abusive? The only thing I've ever beaten in this house is rush hour traffic. He snorted. Don't worry. We've got more than enough to counter. But just a heads up, she's not going quietly. Of course not. Bitches rarely do. That evening, Alice strutted into the kitchen like she owned the place. Tight dress, too much perfume, holding a shopping bag she definitely couldn't afford on her suddenly uncertain income. She smirked. Don't get too comfortable. Once I'm done, you'll be living in a one-bedroom apartment eating microwave dinners. I set down my fork. Alice, you've been living in this house for years without paying a dime toward the mortgage. If anyone's going to be eating microwave dinners, it's the woman who just filed for spousal support while Instagramming wine night with her boyfriend. Her smirk faltered. Oh, and by the way, I added casually, you should probably check your email. She narrowed her eyes, stomped off, phone in hand. 30 seconds later, I heard the shriek. See, while she was busy rehearsing her victim monologue, I had sent her lawyer, pro bono, naturally, a neat little packet. Screenshots, receipts, hotel bills. A complete archive of her late-night escapades with Bryce. And I'd CC'd her. She stormed back into the kitchen, face red. You had no right. No right. I tilted my head. You had no right to lie. I just fact-checked. She pointed a trembling finger at me. You think you've won. But I'll find a way. I always find a way. I leaned forward slowly, locking eyes with her. Alice, that's the difference between you and me. You scramble for a way. I already built one. She blinked, lips parting, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. And that's when I knew. She wasn't just losing control of the marriage. She was losing control of me. The thing about desperate people? They get sloppy. Alice's last trick started 3 nights later. I came home from work, and the house smelled like lavender and cheap Chardonnay, the scent of her false charm. She was waiting at the dining table in a silk blouse she hadn't worn for me in years. Candles flickering, bottle of wine open, 2 glasses poured. Mark, she said, smiling too wide. Let's talk. I almost laughed. Talk. The time for talking was 27 years ago, before hashtags and hotel rooms. But I sat down anyway. You don't turn down a poker hand just because you can see the bluff. She leaned in, brushing my hand like she remembered how. We can work this out. Don't you think we've both made mistakes? Mistakes. That was her word for it. Like betrayal was the same as forgetting to buy milk. Sure, I said, sipping the wine. We've both made mistakes. Mine was thinking you could change. Her smile twitched. I've spoken to a counselor. She says you've been distant, unavailable. If we presented that in court, there it was. The real reason for dinner. She wasn't after reconciliation. She was after ammunition. I set my glass down carefully. Alice, if you're going to threaten me, at least be creative. Counseling records? Cute. But you should have checked the calendar before trying that one. Her brow furrowed. Because the day you claim I was emotionally absent. I slid a paper across the table. That was the same day you and Bryce charged a couple's massage to our joint card. She froze. I'd been holding that receipt for weeks. Watching her eyes dart back and forth, searching for some excuse, was like watching a cornered animal. Finally, she exhaled sharply. You're twisted. Always snooping. Always controlling. I leaned back, folding my arms. Twisted? Maybe. But controlled? Absolutely. That's why I win. She stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. You think you're clever, but when the judge hears what you've done. What I've done. I cut in, voice calm. Alice, the only thing I've done is prepare. Judges like preparation. They don't like liars with hashtags. For a long moment, she glared at me, fists clenched, chest heaving. And then, she snapped back into performance mode. She smoothed her blouse, picked up her glass, and said sweetly, You'll regret underestimating me. Then she walked upstairs, as if she hadn't just lost another round. The next morning, I found the move she thought was checkmate. A voicemail from a detective. Apparently, Alice had filed a report claiming I'd been stalking her, harassing her, even threatening her work husband. Cute. Very cute. I called back immediately. Calm, polite, cooperative. I invited him over. When he arrived, I handed him a flash drive. Officer, before you ask, this contains 3 months of emails, text threads, GPS data, and credit card receipts. All of it proves I wasn't stalking her. I was documenting her. He blinked, surprised. You've been keeping this long? Let's just say I don't gamble without chips, I replied. He scrolled through the evidence on his laptop. Within minutes, his expression shifted from suspicion to barely concealed amusement. Looks like she's been economical with the truth. Economical, I echoed, smiling faintly. That's one way to put it. He closed the laptop and shook his head. We'll file this under false report. She may face consequences for wasting resources. When he left, I sat in my office, staring at the little oak box on my desk. Still empty. Still waiting. Alice didn't come home that night. Probably too embarrassed. Probably thought disappearing would unnerve me. But you can't unsettle a man who's already rearranged the battlefield. Instead, I kept building. I forwarded her false report to my lawyer, who grinned like a kid on Christmas morning. Judges hate this, he said. If she keeps this up, not only does she lose the divorce, she risks perjury charges. Good, I said. Let her keep digging. And she did. Oh, she dug like a pro. 2 days later, a mutual friend texted me. Alice is saying you drained her accounts and left her penniless. I chuckled. Not quite. What I had done was separate my income from hers, document every transfer, and leave her exactly half, just as the law required. But to her, half wasn't enough. To her, fair always felt like robbery. So, I let her whine. I let her spin her stories at wine nights and yoga classes, painting me as some cold tyrant. Because while she was busy trashing my reputation, I was quietly polishing hers into a weapon. Every time she posted another smiling photo of herself with Bryce, I screenshotted it. Every time she tagged herself at a bar while claiming to be on a business trip, I archived the metadata. And every time she called me controlling, I compiled a neat list of her credit card charges, from spa weekends to lingerie she'd never worn for me. Evidence, evidence, evidence. Then came the showdown. Saturday morning. She burst into the house like a storm cloud, Bryce trailing behind her like a golden retriever who didn't know the leash was wrapped around his neck. This is over, she declared, tossing a folder onto the coffee table. I'm filing for sole property rights and spousal support. Bryce puffed up his chest. Yeah, man, just give it up. Alice deserves better. I couldn't help it. I laughed. You? I said, looking him up and down. You're the prize she traded for? A man who thinks cologne is a substitute for character? His face reddened. You're just bitter. Not bitter, I corrected. Prepared. I opened the oak box. Finally filled. Inside, neatly stacked, were copies of every document, every receipt, every screenshot. I spread them across the table like cards in a winning hand. Emails, texts, photos, even Bryce's shirtless mirror selfie from the Burstone Hotel. Alice's face drained of color. What is this? She whispered. This, I said calmly, is your legacy. Every lie, every betrayal, every dollar misused. All cataloged, dated, and prepared for the judge. And if you push me, I tapped the final envelope, sealed and read. For the IRS. Bryce's jaw fell. You wouldn't. I leaned back, smiling. Try me. Alice sank into the couch, her bravado finally cracking. For the first time in months, she looked smaller than me. You can't do this, she muttered. I already did. That night, after they left in silence, I sat alone with the oak box. For months it had been empty, waiting. Now it was full. And the strangest thing? I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel triumph. I felt clarity. Because revenge isn't about shouting. It's not about smashing plates or throwing punches. It's about precision. About letting the other person dig their own grave, and then quietly handing them the shovel. And Alice? She was already waist deep. Courtrooms are funny places. They're quiet, respectful, sanitized. But beneath the oak panels and polished floors, it's a battlefield like any other. Only difference is, instead of swords, you fight with paper. Alice walked in like she was stepping onto a runway. Hair done, new suit, fake pearls gleaming. Bryce was sitting in the back row, trying to look supportive, but mostly looking like a man who'd never seen a tax form in his life. I walked in with my lawyer, Marcus. Calm, steady, holding a single black folder. No dramatics. No theatrics. Just facts. The judge was a woman in her late 60s, Sharp eyes, no patience for nonsense. I liked her immediately. Alice's lawyer started with the usual sob story. Your Honor, my client has endured years of emotional neglect. She was left isolated, unsupported, and when she finally found companionship, her husband retaliated with harassment, stalking, and financial abuse. I nearly choked on my water. Harassment? Financial abuse? That woman had maxed out 2 credit cards on yoga retreats and handbags. But I didn't interrupt. That was the key. Let them talk. Let them bury themselves. Alice dabbed her eyes with a tissue, looking like a widow instead of a woman caught hashtagging work is banned for life. Bryce even put his arm around her shoulder from the back row. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't lived through the reality, I might have bought a ticket myself. Then it was Marcus's turn. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get theatrical. He just opened the black folder and started sliding documents onto the judge's bench. Your Honor, Exhibit A, a series of social media posts from the respondent, Mrs. Alice, openly referring to another man as her real partner. The judge's eyebrows rose. Exhibit B, hotel receipts from the Burstone Hotel, in her name, on nights she claimed to be away for work. Attached are matching photographs from her social media accounts, clearly showing the same wallpaper, timestamped to the same dates. Alice shifted in her seat. Exhibit C, financial records. Over the past 2 years, Mrs. Alice spent a combined $48,000 on personal items charged to joint accounts, none of which benefited the household. Designer clothes, spa packages, even a rental car for her companion. The judge frowned. Marcus wasn't done. He placed one more document on the bench. And Exhibit D, a false police report filed by Mrs. Alice last week, claiming harassment and stalking. Officer's statement attached, confirming it was found to be without merit. We submit this demonstrates not only dishonesty, but an attempt to weaponize law enforcement against my client. You could have heard a pin drop. Alice's lawyer fumbled with his papers, muttered something about context. Alice sat frozen, tissue still pressed to her cheek. Except now she wasn't crying. She was pale. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Alice, do you dispute these documents? Alice opened her mouth, closed it, then stammered. They're taken out of context. The judge tapped the papers. Hotel receipts are not context. They are facts. Bryce shifted uncomfortably in the back, as if realizing the walls were closing in. Marcus gave a small, polite smile. In conclusion, Your Honor, my client is not contesting a divorce. He simply requests fair division of assets. Assets he has already safeguarded against misuse. Given the evidence, we believe his actions were not controlling, but protective. The judge nodded slowly, eyes never leaving Alice. Protective, indeed. The gavel came down 2 weeks later. Divorce granted. Property division heavily in my favor. Spousal support denied. Alice didn't even look at me when the ruling was read. She just gathered her papers and stormed out, Bryce trailing behind like a chastised puppy. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because while she thought the war was over, I knew better. Court was just one battle. Revenge, the real kind, takes patience. After the ruling, Alice tried one more stunt. She called me late at night, voice trembling, pretending to be broken. You really think you've won? She whispered. Mark, I'll ruin you. I don't care how long it takes. You'll regret humiliating me. I let the silence stretch until she cracked. Say something, she demanded. Finally, I said. Alice, humiliation isn't what I did to you in court. Humiliation is what you've been doing to yourself for years. I just held up the mirror. Click. That weekend, Bryce's wife, yes, the CEO's assistant, sent me an email. Short and brutal. Thank you. You gave me the evidence I needed. Bryce is out of my house and out of the company. Attached was a screenshot, Bryce's termination letter. Effective immediately. I sat back in my chair and laughed. Not loud, not triumphant, just quiet. Precise. One domino falling after another. Alice, of course, tried to spin it all. On social media, she posted pictures of wine glasses, sunsets, captions about new beginnings. But the comments told another story. People weren't congratulating her. They were asking questions. Wait, wasn't that during a work trip? Isn't that Bryce, the married guy? Didn't your husband just win full custody of the house? Likes dried up. Support vanished. Reputation cracked. And me? I stayed silent. Because nothing is more unnerving to a narcissist than silence. They thrive on reactions. Starve them, and they wither. But I wasn't done. One evening, I sat in my office staring at the oak box again. It wasn't just full now, it was overflowing. Evidence, receipts, screenshots. Enough to bury her 10 times over. And at the bottom, that red envelope. The IRS card I hadn't played. See, Alice had a habit of being creative with her taxes. Side commissions from sales, little under-the-table deals she thought I never noticed. I had noticed. I had documented. And the envelope held every shred of proof. I hadn't sent it. Not yet. Because revenge isn't about speed. It's about timing. And Alice wasn't at her lowest yet. She still thought she could claw her way back. But when the time came, when she tried her next desperate move, that envelope would be the final nail. And so I waited. Calm. Patient. Watching her flail, watching her sink deeper, knowing the cruelest revenge isn't loud, isn't bloody. It's unexpected. And hers was coming that I knew Alice wouldn't go quietly. That's the curse of arrogance. It doesn't fade, it festers. For a while after the court ruling, things were quiet. Too quiet. I should have known she was plotting. And sure enough, a month later, I found out what her big comeback was. It came in the form of a letter. Certified mail, stamped with some lawyer's crest fancier than the last one. She was suing me for emotional damages, claiming my vindictive campaign had cost her a career, a relationship, and her social standing. I actually laughed out loud in the kitchen, letter in hand, coffee in the other. Emotional damages. As if hashtags and hotel receipts were my invention. I called Marcus, my lawyer. She's coming again, I said. He chuckled. And she's walking straight into the same trap. You've still got the oak box. Full to the brim, I said. Good. Then this won't take long. Courtroom, round 2. Alice had switched lawyers. This one younger, flashier, with hair so slick it looked like you could see your reflection in it. He strutted in like he'd already won. Alice sat beside him, lips pressed tight, eyes darting at me with that same old venom. The judge? Same woman as before. Lucky me. Alice's lawyer started with drama. He painted me as a calculating villain. Said-eyed, orchestrated a character assassination campaign against a vulnerable woman just trying to rebuild her life. Alice dabbed her eyes again. Theatrics, round 2. Bryce wasn't there this time. Guess getting fired had finally dampened his enthusiasm for playing sidekick. Then Marcus stood. Calm. Steady. He didn't need theatrics. He just opened the oak box. Your Honor, he said, we've compiled a full record of my client's communications with Mrs. Alice. I'll let the evidence speak for itself. And oh, did it speak. First came the texts. Alice, messaging Bryce about how she'd drain me dry and laugh about it later. The judge's eyebrow twitched. Not a good sign for Alice. Then came the emails. Alice bragging to a friend about how she'd played the sad wife card and was planning to bleed him in court. Alice squirmed. Her lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Finally, Marcus pulled out the coup de grace, a set of bank transfers Alice had made right after filing the emotional damages claim. Transfers to an account in her sister's name. The amounts? Suspiciously close to the damages she was suing for. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Alice, care to explain why you've been moving money into hidden accounts while simultaneously claiming financial distress? Alice stammered. Her lawyer shuffled his papers like maybe the answer was hidden between the lines. Nothing. The gavel came down hard. Case dismissed. And Mrs. Alice, I suggest you tread carefully before filing further claims. This court does not tolerate frivolous litigation. Alice's face went crimson. She muttered something under her breath. Something about me being a monster, about me ruining her life. I stood, gathered my papers, and gave her the faintest of smiles. Alice, I didn't ruin your life. I just stopped funding it. After that, the cracks really showed. She tried damage control online, of course. Posted pictures of herself, starting fresh. Captions about resilience and rebirth. But the comments weren't kind. Didn't you lose in court again? Thought you said you were the victim? Where's Bryce? Each time, she replied with some hollow platitude. Each time, fewer people believed her. And me? I stayed quiet. That's the beauty of being one step ahead. You don't need to fight every battle. Sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon. Then came the final straw. A friend of mine, who still worked at Alice's old company, called me one evening. You won't believe this, he said, barely suppressing a laugh. What? Alice applied for a position in another branch. Sent her resume. Only problem is, she listed Bryce as a reference. And HR called his ex-wife to confirm. I nearly spilled my drink. She what? Yeah. The ex-wife didn't just confirm. She forwarded the screenshots you sent her. The ones of Alice and Bryce in the hotel. HR flagged her immediately. She's blacklisted from the entire company now. That was the moment I realized Alice wasn't just reckless, she was self-destructive. The phone call came the next day. Alice, voice sharp, trembling with rage. You're not satisfied until I'm dead, are you? She snapped. I leaned back in my chair. Alice, I didn't send your resume. I didn't list Bryce as your reference. That was all you. You think you're so smart, she hissed. But karma comes around. You'll get yours. Karma, I said quietly. Alice, karma's been sitting on the porch watching you dig your own grave. I just hand her the shovel now and then. Click. She hung up. That night, I pulled the oak box back onto my desk. Evidence, receipts, screenshots. And at the bottom, still untouched, the red envelope. The IRS card. I turned it over in my hands. All her under-the-table commissions, her little cash deals, her side hustle, she never reported. Enough to keep an auditor busy for months. But I didn't send it. Not yet. Timing mattered. Timing was everything. Alice was on the edge. I could see it. She'd lost the court battles, lost her job, lost her lover, lost her credibility. But she still thought she had one last card left to play. And when she tried it, when she made that one final desperate move, that's when the red envelope would land on the right desk. And she'd never see it coming. A week later, she made that move. It started with a text, late at night. Short, bitter. You can't win forever. I stared at it, shaking my head. She still didn't get it. Winning wasn't about forever. It was about precision. And mine was coming. I slept well that night. Because revenge doesn't rush. It waits. It breathes. And Alice? She was out of breath. The night Alice sent that bitter little text, you can't win forever, I knew the endgame was coming. People like her don't fade quietly. They thrash. They claw. They throw mud until they're drowning in it. Her next move proved it. I got a call from Marcus one morning. You'll love this, he said dryly. She's trying to reopen the divorce. Claims she discovered new financial misconduct on your part. I raised an eyebrow. Financial misconduct? Like what? She's alleging you hid offshore accounts, he said, chuckling. Apparently in Cyprus. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Cyprus? I've barely left Ohio. She's bluffing, Marcus said. But she filed anyway. Judge is not going to be pleased. He was right. At the next hearing, Alice waltzed in with a fat binder, papers spilling everywhere like confetti at a pity parade. Her lawyer, slick-haired, still clinging to the sinking ship, declared I'd hidden millions abroad. The judge listened for about 5 minutes, then cut him off. Do you have evidence? Well, circumstantial, he stammered. Circumstantial? The judge's tone could have cut granite. Counselor, I don't run a circus. I run a court. File one more baseless motion, and I'll hold your client in contempt. Alice's face went red. She opened her mouth to argue, but the judge banged the gavel. Case closed. Again. As we left, she hissed at me. Enjoy this while it lasts. I'll find something that sticks. I leaned in close. Alice, everything sticks to you. That's the problem. At home, I opened the oak box again. The red envelope stared up at me like a loaded pistol. Not yet, I thought. Not yet. Because the cruelest revenge isn't striking when they're loud. It's striking when they think the noise has saved them. Alice disappeared for a few weeks. No calls, no texts. I almost thought she'd finally learned her lesson. Almost. Then one morning, I woke up to a voicemail from Noah, my neighbor's kid, who works part-time at the bank. Mr. Turner, thought you should know. Alice came in yesterday. She tried to withdraw from the joint savings. Said she had authorization. Joint savings. I repeated. That account had been closed months ago. She brought paperwork, Noah whispered. Fake paperwork. We flagged it immediately. Managers reporting it. Fake paperwork. Fraud. She was escalating from petty lies to federal crimes. That evening, I got a call from Alice herself. Her voice was tight, panicked, but she was still trying to sound smug. You think you're clever, she snapped. But I'll take what's mine one way or another. Alice, I said calmly, you've already taken enough. All you're doing now is giving me more rope. Click. She hung up. That night, I pulled out the red envelope. I ran my fingers along the seal. I thought about the IRS agent who would open it, the endless audits, the years of interest, the weight of every creative little omission Alice had ever made. I could send it now. I wanted to. But patience has teeth. So I slid it back in the box. Not yet. Because Alice wasn't finished hanging herself. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday. Marcus called me, half laughing, half stunned. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Try me," I replied. "She filed a restraining order against you." I blinked. "A restraining order? I haven't seen her in weeks." "Exactly. She claimed you've been harassing her, showing up at her job, following her car. But here's the kicker. Her job fired her last month, and her car's been repossessed." I sat back in my chair, grinning. "So she filed a restraining order against a ghost." "Pretty much," Marcus said. "Judge tossed it out in 5 minutes. But here's where it gets interesting. The court's now flagging her as vexatious. She won't be able to file again without pre-approval." I let out a slow laugh. "So she just disarmed herself." "Exactly. She's cornered." That night, I poured a glass of bourbon and sat with the oak box one last time. The envelope felt heavier than ever. I'd given her every chance to stop. She hadn't. She'd doubled, tripled, quadrupled down, each time losing more. And now? Now the box wasn't leverage anymore. It was justice. I sealed it in a new envelope, addressed it neatly, and placed it by the door. Tomorrow, it would go to the IRS. Alice wanted war. She was about to get an audit. The fallout didn't come all at once. Revenge never does. It trickles, slow and relentless, like water wearing down stone. 3 weeks after I mailed the envelope, I got the first sign. A letter from the IRS. Not to me, but mistakenly sent to my address. Alice's name on the header. Request for records. Audit initiated. I smiled and slid it back into the mailbox. Then came the calls. Alice, furious, panicked, begging. "Mark, you did this." "I know you did. They're tearing me apart. They're asking about every account, every commission. I could go to jail." I stayed silent. "Say something," she screamed. "Finally," I said. "Alice, you always wanted attention. Now you've got the government's." Click. By summer, her life was rubble. Savings frozen. Accounts seized. Friends gone. Bryce? Long vanished. Even her sister stopped answering her calls once investigators started sniffing around her helpful little transfers. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't dance on the ashes. I lived. Peacefully. Quietly. The sweetest revenge of all. The unexpected twist? I didn't just mail the envelope. I left a copy in her mailbox, too. No note. No explanation. Just the evidence in her hands. So she knows. She knows exactly who outplayed her, who dismantled her, who turned every lie into her noose. She'll spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, wondering when the next hammer will fall. That's the cruelest part. Not the audit, not the loss, not even the humiliation. The cruelest part is knowing I was always one step ahead, and she never saw the last move coming. And that's how you take revenge. Not with fists, not with shouting, with silence, with patience, with precision. Alice thought she was playing chess, but she was just another piece in my game.